When leaders announce a blockade, the headline suggests a binary outcome: either oil flows or it does not. The reality of Iran's shadow fleet proves that Washington has achieved neither total success nor failure in the way most viewers assume. Instead of stopping exports, maximum pressure has transformed U.S. naval power into a logistical burden while Tehran monetizes sanctions through market arbitrage. Today, we read this move as strategy rather than a morality play to understand why every dollar spent patrolling the strait is effectively subsidizing Iranian revenue and eroding Western leverage in global energy markets. The confusion between a blockade, which implies a complete stop, and the fluid reality of global supply chains creates a false narrative that military pressure works when it often does not. The ships are still moving, just differently than anyone expected. When Washington applies maximum pressure to halt oil flows, they do not get zero barrels leaving Iranian ports. They receive discounted barrels sold through a maze of shell companies and ship-to-ship transfers where U.S. naval assets cannot legally or practically intercept without triggering global market chaos. This has turned the Gulf conflict into a complex logistical struggle where American maritime dominance faces diminishing returns against an adversary that treats sanctions as arbitrage opportunities rather than insurmountable walls. To understand this dynamic, one must look at how Iran's shadow fleet operates through what is essentially oil laundering. Sanctions do not stop oil. They fragment trade routes and force exports over longer distances to a shrinking pool of buyers in China, India, and Turkey. Iranian operators utilize opaque intermediaries to bypass U.S. naval oversight by engaging in ship-to-ship transfers with disabled tracking beacons or using fraudulent certificates of origin. This allows the flow of crude to continue at near pre-sanction levels despite strict prohibitions and secondary sanctions designed to freeze every vessel involved. The mechanism is simple yet effective. When a sanctioned tanker meets an unsanctioned partner, they swap cargo in international waters without ever entering port under their own name, effectively erasing the digital trail that enforcement agencies rely on to catch violators red-handed before legal action can begin. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. The result of this evasion strategy creates a stark asymmetry where U.S. naval power is forced into a futile chase while Iran maintains its revenue stream. Historical data from previous maximum pressure campaigns shows export volumes remaining stable for over 9 months despite strict bans, suggesting that new sanctions targeting entities like Rosneft or Lukoil will follow the same trajectory: initial compliance followed by rapid relabeling and resumption of flows under new names. The strategic cost is visible in global supply numbers rather than Iranian bank accounts. Because producers feel compelled to cut production due to the uncertainty created by this conflict, over 10 million barrels per day have been removed from global supply chains. This tightens stockpiles and causes refined product shortages in the Indo-Pacific, proving that while Washington seeks to strangle Tehran's economy, it is inadvertently tightening its own energy security at a time when stability matters most. For context on just how fragile this situation has become, consider the role of OPEC as the primary stabilizer for global oil prices. The organization typically provides 3 million barrels per day in spare capacity that acts as a shock absorber during market disruptions. However, with reports suggesting a potential exit by the UAE from OPEC coordination in April 2026, this mechanism is at risk of dismantling entirely. If this stabilizer breaks, what was once a targeted blockade could turn into a full-blown global supply shock that undermines U.S. energy security and complicates technology race positioning against China. The United States has become a net crude exporter for the first time since World War II due to these rerouted shipments, but those gains are fragile without a clear strategic endgame to manage such volatility. The failure of secondary sanctions lies in their reliance on catching violators before enforcement can begin, a slow legal process that fails to match the speed of market arbitrage by unscrupulous traders. While U.S. assets patrol key choke points, they cannot easily distinguish between legitimate commercial traffic and shadow fleet operations without risking global economic fallout. Every time news reports on sanctions tightening, It often masks an increase in market volatility and supply chain fragility rather than genuine isolation for Iran. The United States is trading long-term strategic leverage regarding energy dominance for short-term tactical wins that are easily circumvented by state actors with no regard for Western legal frameworks. As China scales up AI and semiconductor capacity while the U.S. loses control of these critical flow lines, the West risks ceding ground in the Indo-Pacific without firing a single shot. The real failure is not just in stopping Iran but in failing to account for how states adapt when their survival is at stake. Sanctions are a blunt instrument against a fluid market that rewards innovation and evasion over compliance. When leaders announce blockades, they often ignore the incentives driving actors on both sides of the conflict. The question remains, who designed this incentive structure, who cannot afford to walk away, and what option still looks rational for each side as global energy markets shift under pressure? Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.